Shepard Fairey, and I created my 50 at 50 playlist because music has been such a huge part of my life. Not just what I listen to, but what inspires me. It's really shaped a lot of my ideas, a lot of my methodology for my art. And some of the stuff that you're going to hear is stuff that was a gateway to entire cultures or genres. Other things are a little bit more funny, but it's all part of my journey. It's the fabric of my life. The first song on my 50 at 50 playlist is YMCA by the Village People. People who know my music taste might think that that's a very strange selection, but it's the first record I bought with my own money. I was 8 years old. I was super into pop radio, disco. I went with my dad to Woolworths or some other department store. They had the top 20 7-inch singles on the wall. YMCA was at number 2. I looked at my dad and said, "What is going on right now? That can't be possible. YMCA is by far the best song in the world." I had no idea that YMCA was totally about gay subculture. I just loved its exuberance, and that's my first 7-inch. Later on, I realized how similarly Rock the Casbah by The Clash was structured, and I didn't feel quite as uncool for picking that as my first one. Another song on my 50 at 50 playlist is Heart of Glass by Blondie. I was 9 when that came out, and I didn't have a cool record collection, cool friends. It was on pop radio, and I just knew that it was different. I don't even know how I defined cool at that age, but Heart of Glass was cool. And of course, Debbie Harry is gorgeous. Everyone loves Debbie Harry. But the song itself is just a great, infectious song. They called it a disco song, but to me it had another element of sort of New York sleekness to it that made me curious about the culture it came from. So that was a gateway for me. Later on, I learned about CBGBs and punk and all of that, but I might not have even had that interest if it weren't for Blondie. Another song on my 50 at 50 playlist is Bloodstains by Agent Orange. On my 14th birthday, February 15th, 1984, I wanted my first skateboard. My mom said she would get it for me if I saved half the money, which I did by mowing lawns. We drove to the skate shop, and coincidentally, they had just gotten in a video called Skate Visions by Vision Skateboards and Sim Skateboards, and the soundtrack was Agent Orange. So I had an incredibly intense, euphoric association with putting together my first skateboard and listening to this music, which I then decided was going to be the soundtrack to my new life. My previous life was BS before skateboarding. After skateboarding, I was going to be a new, cool, rebel person. Agent Orange did end up being a gateway to all of punk rock for me, and Bloodstains is a great song. Holidays in the Sun by the Sex Pistols is one of the most important songs on the 50 at 50 playlist because the Sex Pistols weren't just a great punk rock group. They were a band that changed the entire music paradigm in the late 70s when they dropped their album, Nevermind the Bollocks, Here's the Sex Pistols. Now for me, as a 14-year-old hearing it, I just heard the boots at the beginning of Holidays in the Sun, the drums, the guitars, all my arm hairs stood up, and I loved the way it sounded, but quickly I realized that this was a band that had geniuses behind it. Malcolm McLaren as the manager, media manipulator, Steve Jones, the great guitarist, Johnny Rotten, the brilliant lyricist, and Vivienne Westwood, the great fashion designer who my daughter Vivienne is named after. The Sex Pistols made me think about how music and art in general can manipulate culture. Another song on my 50 at 50 playlist is Bring the Noise by Public Enemy. I discovered Public Enemy because Thrasher magazine wrote a review of their first album, Yo Bum Rush the Show, and said, "This is the new punk rock." I listened to it, and in fact, there's a Suicidal Tendencies sample in there, which was a bridge to punk rock, and it's just a heavy, heavy album. It's a great album, but it's just a warm-up for their follow-up album, It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back. The first song on that album is Bring the Noise. Air raid sirens come in, says too black, too strong, and then it just kicks in to Bring the Noise. It's one of the most powerful moments in music. I think that Chuck D from Public Enemy is a real visionary. He's a hero of mine. That song is strong. The whole album is strong. To me, it's a turning point when I decided that Public Enemy and hip hop in general were genuinely the new punk rock, and that hip hop was the most creative force in music of that time. To learn more about the bands and songs that soundtracked my life and have shaped my art, my vision, everything, go to obeygiant.com just to get a bit more of a window into my evolution through music.